All right, so we got it out of the jig, we got it up here, so we don't have to work off the floor anymore. The reason I didn't have the jig and everything up here is because I couldn't get a good camera shot. It was too tall. But for this stuff, we're gonna stay down low. You don't need to see any of the top stuff. Since it's out of the jig, before we get started on the front end jig and alignment for the A-arm attachment bars, I'm gonna tack the bottom of these two backs and the bottom of the front two lower posts. All right, I am reshooting this entire segment, not because there's a problem with anything, everything's fine. I just found an easier way to do something, easier for alignment. So I deleted all the old stuff. I had everything in, all nice and square, it was done, but there is a easier way to do this. So the next steps involve these two pieces here. If you're working on the left, it's C14 and C21. Now, I made all these pieces to be able to go in together for proper alignment left to right and for the A-arms we're going to use. Now, I've devised a jig, which is also in the plans. This sets the perfect geometry for the ATV A-arms that I use. You clamp in the jig. And you're going to square it up. And now you have an amazing platform to get your piece in the correct place. This just lays in here, attaches to the front bar. Same with the other side. And that gives you perfect alignment for your upper and lower A-arms. Now I can't stress enough that this is not a snap-tight kit. This is a fabrication, this is a frame assembly. Now, something I figured out and why I'm reshooting this is that there's a cross member that goes across the front here that triangulates all of this. Now this just slips right down in here. Make sure it's level, and if this is cut to the correct length, then your forward uprights should rest right at that triangulation point. These should sit right here. Work from this. You're going to have to trim the bottom ears off since it is a triangulation point. There's going to be plenty of weld there. There's going to be plenty of strength. Get those in place and then trim your upper A-arm attachment bars to fit in this area. And there you have it, one perfectly aligned front end. I'm really glad I thought of that cross member. It didn't make it any necessarily easier, but it made it faster. Having that reference point already in place meant I didn't have to align these with each other and triangulate that. I just set this in, cut the ears, made these line up and triangulate, and then everything else just fell into place. It was minimal trimming. It was really, really nice. Get a bunch of references. I don't know if you saw in the time lapse. Let's make everything square. I popped my digital angle finder on. If these two angles match, then they're square to each other. So that way you can set one, then set the angle of your other, and it'll help you align your upper A-arm bars. And don't forget about using your cross members. Now I just dropped these in because I know the reference points of them. If those match and everything looks good, then it is good. If you come out to a different angle than me, like 42 degrees, you're still going to have a cross member here. Your front end is still going to be aligned, and it's still going to be strong. I designed this that way for the small variations in different builds. So let's talk front suspension. You got to put front suspension on your Crosskart, your buggy, your shifter cart, whatever you want to call it. But you don't know how to make A-arms. You don't want to spend $500 on Heim joints and try to plasma cut all your tabs and everything. Try to figure out the geometry, the Ackerman, the camber, the caster. There's just too much there. So what you can do, instead of engineering your own parts and hoping it's right, you can re-engineer ATV parts. Now, these are tried and true. I've been on ATVs since the 80s. And those bikes from the 80s are still running, so these are probably pretty well designed. Now you can pick up a set of these, full front end, A-arms, tie rod, shock, hub, brake, everything you need to bolt to the front end of your Crosskart. Now I got this set for $225. The only problem is ATVs steer from the back. They have a whole different steering setup. So there's an easy solution to that. It retains the same steering geometry from the factory, and you are free to put a rack and pinion on the front. Now the next big question is, how am I going to mount this to the buggy? Now we've made tubular A-arm upper and lower mounts, and we've squared them out and made them even top to bottom, so the only thing left is to make tabs. I am going to demystify tabs for you. If you're attaching to 1¼ inch tubing, use 1¼ inch tabs. This is just flat bar metal. You get it for like 11 bucks anywhere. Lowe's, Home Depot, your hardware store. And you get it in a long length like this. And you've got yourself, I don't know, 20 tabs in there for $11. You don't need a $5,000 plasma cutter. You don't need to design your parts and ship them out to be CNC made for you. There's actually a really, really simple way to make it. Right, first, you determine your bolt size. Now, I know that these are 10mm bolts, and you can either get a metric bit set, or you can find just the closest 1/16 or 32nds of an inch. And that's going to be your hole. Now, where do you put this hole? You give 1/2 to 1 full of the width of the hole as extra metal over here. You don't want this too thin and you don't want it too thick. And then what's the distance between here? Well, that's just the distance required to clear the Zerk fitting. So I've got 2 ends of this big flat bar steel, so I can make 4 tabs at a time using this method. Now you're going to need a handy dandy ruler. And what I came up with for the distance to the center of the hole to the edge of the metal is 5/8. So I'm going to mark it at 5/8. And then I'm going to split it in half. This is 1¼ inch, so 5/8 by 5/8. You can see my little caret there. Now, the distance I came up with for the distance from the center of the hole to the edge of the cut, 1 inch. But you're going to cut from the center with a hole saw, and this is going to be 1¼ inch size hole saw. So you need to cut that in half, so it's 1 inch plus 5/8 is going to give you 1 inch and 5/8. So you measure 1 inch and 5/8 from your hole, then you measure across 5/8, and that's where you're going to put your punch. Now, here's the fun part. Measure another 1 inch and 5/8. Put another caret on there. And then measure another 5/8. and that's your cutoff. So you have two separate tabs with one hole saw cut. That's perfectly even to each other. That's going to be your hole saw cut. That's going to be your first hole and your second hole, and you have two tabs. Now flip this bar to the other end, do the same measurements, and you can have 4 tabs by only hitting the machines once. Alright, I've got my bolt, I've got my stepper bit, and I've got my hole saw, 1.25 inch, because I'm using 1.25 inch flat bar steel. These are going to be for the upper A-arms. You take your handy dandy digital caliper, you get your inches and fractions off of this metric bolt. It looks like we're at 13/30 seconds. So you get a stepper bit that has 13/30 seconds on it. Now I like to tape mine. You can set the plunge of your drill press Now we've got a nice snug fit with the bolt. Now cutting through flat bar with a hole saw will shorten the life of the hole saw just because of the nature of it, but it's still cheaper than buying a plasma cutter. So now if you want to make it look like this, all you got to do is cut the corners at a 45, take it to the grinder, and round it off. And there you have it. I have one piece of flat bar in about 10 minutes. You've got the tabs for one of your entire upper A-arms. Now, you're going to want to tighten these down on a flat surface so that they sit straight. See how they're nice and aligned? So when you go to put them on, they're just going to sit right in the center of that tube. Alright, now I've put some blocks under the rear so that the front is flat on the floor to match that rake. Now to get these aligned correctly, you want that on a flat surface. Alright, and from there, it's just as easy as sliding this in. Now, C33 and C32, I believe they are these pieces right here, okay? Now, everybody worries about the A-arms, nobody worries about the shocks. The shocks are always an afterthought, but not on this. Where the heck are we going to mount these shocks? We've got the A-arms all figured out, but where are we going to put the shocks? Well, I've included these as uprights for the shocks. So all you do is you put your level on it, get it nice and straight up and down, then you have a place to mount your shock. And not only that, you have a place to mount multiple lengths of shocks, different ride heights. Now as you see here, I've made this piece long to accommodate different A-arms and different A-arm configurations. Now for this, if I hook this up here, it would get stiction, which is when the shock travels, it binds. So I've made this piece long, so all you have to do is trim it to the length that triangulates your shock, or triangulates with your A-arm and your shock mounting position. Trim it in, get it set, and you will have a free moving front end without stiction, and you're free to use any A-arm you want. All right, from here, you can just clamp some blocks on so that your upper A-arm tabs have a place to rest when you're trying to line them up. And it's as easy as putting them on there. Now you're gonna have to pay attention to your caster angle. If you put them too far forward, you're gonna take away all of this rake. Now we are straight and level and squared to the rake of the front of this cart. So you can add caster, you can take away caster, but this is the caster that's going to be set forever because these are not adjustable. They're from an ATV. So then once you have it there, you have a perfectly aligned factory suspension system with all the geometry, brakes, and this took all of what, a half an hour? You're not gonna have to worry about figuring out caster, you're not gonna have to worry about figuring out Ackerman or bump steer. It's all already engineered into these arms. And it's rebuildable and replaceable without custom fabbing your own parts. You blow out your bushings, get a new bushing kit. You blow out the bearings, get some new bearings. You blow out your ball joints, press in some new ball joints. You bend your tie rod, get a new tie rod. This is all rebuildable, and these are factory brake pads. So when you need a brake job, you just get factory brake pads. They fit a wide variety of wheels and tires because they're a common bolt pattern. And your front end is done. That's it. All right, the time has come to tell you why this is named the VF1 cart. VF stands for variable frame cart, and this is the first of its kind, so it's a 1. Now, say you want the ride height of the stock ATV or off-road vehicle, clears good obstacles, maintains semi-low CG. This would be your ride height. Now you can just put the stock front tires on there, run it at ATV ride height, get the full stroke of suspension, run it all day long very comfortably. But say you want to go a little faster, say you want to be a little lower, say you want to be a little more like a Crosskart, 5 inches off the ground, cornering hard, small jumps, we can do that. There you go, 5 inches of ride height, stiffer shocks, 2.5 inches of suspension travel, which is probably like 3.5. Say that you want the big boy, you want the lifted, you want the big tires, you want the clearance, you want to run over stuff. Well, we can do that. And here you go. Tons of ground clearance, tons of attitude. This is where you set up your style, how you want this to look. Make it yours, customize it. These all aren't cookie cutter Crosskarts. This is a basic frame that I've designed to give you the freedom of creation, freedom to be unique, freedom to build this however you want. I tried really hard to come up with something that would give a base to whatever style you want to drive, for whatever terrain you wanted to cross, for whatever ideas you have for what the perfect go-kart, cross-kart, shifter kart, mini buggy should be. And easy to build, very understandable, easy to square up, easy to customize, variable frame cart.